The July sun of 1982 punished the asphalt of the interstate highway in California. Ray Phelps wiped the sweat from his forehead with the sleeve of his already grease-stained shirt. The small garage he had inherited from his father, located a few miles from Los Angeles, rarely received customers during that scorching midday hour. Most sensible drivers waited for the heat to diminish or sought out large service centers with air conditioning. Ray was about to close for lunch when the sound of a faltering engine caught his attention. A black Rolls-Royce Corniche convertible, a model that cost more than 5 years of his salary, limped into the yard of his shop. The luxury car emitted irregular sounds that indicated serious problems. The vehicle stopped, and from the driver's side emerged a black man in his 40s, wearing a suit and dark glasses. From the passenger side came a slender figure wearing a strange combination of clothes that seemed designed to conceal his identity. A cap pulled low, enormous dark glasses, and a light jacket despite the suffocating heat. The man moved with an almost rehearsed gracefulness, even in his hesitant steps. "Good morning, we need help," said the man in the suit, keeping himself between Ray and the other man, like a bodyguard. "We're having engine trouble and have an important commitment in Los Angeles in a few hours." Ray cleaned his hands on the rag hanging from his belt and approached. "Let me take a look," he said, already opening the hood of the luxurious vehicle. The problem was evident to his experienced eyes, a burst belt that had damaged part of the cooling system. Nothing impossible to fix, but it would require several hours of work. "I have bad news," said Ray, closing the hood. "I need to replace the belt and check how much of the cooling system was damaged. It'll take at least 3 hours." The man in the suit exchanged concerned looks with the other. "We have no choice," the man with dark glasses finally said in a surprisingly soft voice. "Can we wait here?" There was something familiar about that voice, Ray thought, but he couldn't quite place it. "Sure, I have a small waiting room inside. It's not much, but it has a fan and a refrigerator with soft drinks." The slender man thanked him with a nod and headed into the small room, accompanied by the bodyguard. Ray noticed that the man walked in a peculiar way, almost as if he were floating above the ground. While working on the Rolls-Royce, Ray noticed through the waiting room window that the thinner man had taken off his cap and seemed to be relaxing a bit. His hair was black and curly, falling in locks over his shoulders. His face, even partially obscured by the enormous dark glasses, showed delicate features. There was something incredibly familiar about him. 2 hours passed with Ray working intensely under the heat. He needed to finish before the deadline he had established. It was a matter of professional pride. Besides, he was sure those people were important, perhaps executives from the record industry, something common in that region. The smell of grease and the unbearable heat inside the garage made Ray sweat profusely. He was so focused that he barely noticed when the slender man appeared beside him, observing his work with curiosity. "You really understand these engines, don't you?" he asked in that soft voice. Ray smiled without taking his eyes off the engine. "I learned from my father. He fixed cars for 40 years in this same garage." "It's beautiful to see someone who loves what they do," commented the stranger. "May I ask your name?" "Raymond Phelps, but everyone calls me Ray." "Pleasure to meet you, Ray. Do you have water? I'm a little thirsty." Ray pointed to a small refrigerator in the corner of the garage. "Help yourself, please. There are some bottles in there." The man thanked him and went to get the water. While drinking, he continued observing Ray work. Suddenly, the small radio that Ray kept on started playing Billie Jean, the new hit that was dominating the charts. "This song is everywhere, isn't it?" commented Ray, tapping lightly on the car's body while working. "My 8-year-old daughter won't stop dancing when it plays." The man let out a contained laugh. "Your daughter likes this song?" "Loves it. Actually, she's crazy about this singer, Michael Jackson. She has all the posters in her room. She even saved her allowance to buy the Thriller vinyl when it comes out at the end of the year." The slender man suddenly seemed interested. "What's her name?" "Lucy. My little Lucy." Ray smiled with pride. She wants to be a dancer when she grows up. She spends hours trying to imitate this singer's steps. For an instant, Ray thought he saw a genuine smile illuminate the stranger's face, but it was quickly replaced by a neutral expression. "Do you live nearby?" asked the man. "Right over there." Ray pointed to a modest house next to the garage. "Convenient for work, but noisy at times." The man nodded, thoughtful. At that moment, the bodyguard appeared at the garage door making a discreet gesture, and the slender man politely excused himself, returning to the waiting room. An hour later, Ray finally completed the service. The Rolls-Royce engine now purred perfectly. He called the two men and explained what he had done. "How much do we owe you?" asked the bodyguard, already removing a wallet from his jacket. Ray mentally calculated the cost of the parts and his labor. "It comes to $230, including parts and labor." The bodyguard pulled out a wad of bills and counted out $500. "Keep the change for the excellent service." Ray hesitated. He was never the type to accept exaggerated tips. "It's too much money, sir. The service only cost $230. "I insist," said the man in the suit, placing the money in Ray's hand. "You helped us a lot today." The slender man, who had remained silent, approached. "Thank you, Ray. You really saved our day." He extended his hand for a shake. Ray shook the stranger's gloved hand, again with that sense of familiarity. The hand was surprisingly small and the handshake was gentle. The two men got into the car and left, leaving only a cloud of dust in Ray with the strange feeling that something important had happened, though he didn't know exactly what. That night, while having dinner with his wife Sarah and little Lucy, Ray told them about the mysterious clients. A black Rolls-Royce? Here? Sarah seemed impressed. They must have been important people. "Probably some rich businessman," replied Ray, helping himself to more mashed potatoes. "The important thing is they paid well. With that tip, we can finally fix the roof before the rains come." Lucy, who had been listening attentively, asked, "What did the man look like, Dad?" Ray thought for a moment. "Well, he was thin, with curly black hair. He wore dark glasses and spoke softly. He had a funny way of walking, almost as if—" Ray stopped talking, his mind finally connecting the dots. The curly hair, the soft voice, the way he moved, and right when Billie Jean was playing on the radio. "My God," he whispered, letting the fork fall onto the plate with a clink. "I think I fixed Michael Jackson's car today." Sarah let out a laugh. "Honey, I think the heat affected your head. Why would Michael Jackson be in a roadside garage?" "I'm serious," Ray insisted, now mentally reviewing every detail of the encounter. "The car broke down. They had no choice. And the way he moved, the voice. I'm almost certain." Lucy's eyes widened, her expression oscillating between disbelief and hope. "Dad, do you really think it was him?" Ray nodded, still processing the revelation. "I think so, sweetie, and he asked about you." "About me?" Lucy almost shouted, jumping from her chair. "Yes, I told him you were his fan, that you danced to his songs." Dinner transformed into an animated discussion about the possibility that Ray had really met the king of pop. Lucy was ecstatic just at the idea, while Sarah remained skeptical but amused by the enthusiasm of the two. Ray slept poorly that night, mentally replaying every moment of the encounter, every word exchanged. He was increasingly convinced he had fixed Michael Jackson's car and hadn't even realized it at the time. Quite a story to tell, he thought, even if no one beyond his family believed it. What Ray couldn't imagine was that that casual encounter would forever change the course of his life, and that the true impact of that hot July day in 1982 was yet to come. 3 days after the incident with the Rolls-Royce, Ray was closing the garage when a black limousine parked in front of his establishment. A man in a suit, different from the previous bodyguard but equally imposing, got out of the vehicle and walked toward him. "Mr. Raymond Phelps?" asked the man with a deep, professional voice. Ray nodded, wiping his grease-stained hands on a rag. I have an invitation for you and your family, said the man, handing over a golden envelope. All the details are inside. A car will come to pick you up tomorrow at 6 in the evening. Before Ray could ask any questions, the man had already returned to the limousine, which quickly departed, leaving Ray confused in the middle of the dusty garage yard. With trembling hands, he opened the envelope. Inside was an elegantly printed invitation. Michael Jackson invites Raymond Phelps and family to a private dinner, followed by an exclusive preview of the Thriller music video. Please be ready tomorrow at 6 p.m. Ray felt his legs weaken. So he was right. It really was Michael Jackson that day. He ran home shouting the names of Sarah and Lucy as soon as he crossed the door. What happened? Asked Sarah, coming out of the kitchen with a worried expression. Ray showed her the invitation, his hands still trembling. I was right. It really was him. Lucy, who was coming down the stairs at that moment, froze when she saw the invitation. When she finally understood what was happening, she let out a high-pitched scream that was probably heard on the other side of town. We're going to meet Michael Jackson, she yelled, jumping frantically. Sarah, normally the calmest and most rational of the family, was speechless. She took the invitation, read and reread it several times, as if expecting the golden letters to disappear at any moment. Is this real? She finally asked in a weak voice. The man came in a limousine, Sarah. A limousine. Ray ran his hands through his hair, still dazed. He said they'll pick us up tomorrow. The rest of the night was a whirlwind of emotions. Lucy couldn't stop talking, alternating between crying fits and jumps of joy. Sarah, recovered from the initial shock, went into planning mode, worried about what they should wear for such an important event. Ray remained quiet, still trying to process the surreal turn his life had taken. The following afternoon at 6 o'clock sharp, a limousine even larger than the previous one parked in front of the Phelps house. The same suited man from the day before got out and politely knocked on the door. Ray, Sarah, and Lucy waited anxiously, dressed in their best clothes. Lucy wore a pink dress that was normally reserved for Christmas and special occasions. Sarah had spent hours ironing and pressing her navy blue dress, the only one she considered elegant enough for the occasion. Ray, for his part, wore the only suit he owned, bought for his father's funeral years before, slightly tight at the shoulders. The limousine ride was silent and tense. Lucy, normally chatty, was mute with anxiety, squeezing her mother's hand tightly. Ray looked out the window as they left the suburbs and entered a luxurious area of Beverly Hills. The limousine stopped in front of an imposing gate, which opened automatically after the driver identified himself through the intercom. They followed a long, private driveway until they reached an impressive mansion, illuminated by strategically positioned lights that highlighted its elegant architecture. The driver opened the door for the family, who got out hesitantly, looking around with wide eyes. A butler waited at the entrance, receiving them with a discreet bow. Mr. and Mrs. Phelps, Miss Lucy, welcome. Please follow me. Mr. Jackson is waiting for you. The interior of the mansion was even more impressive. Works of art adorned the walls, and furniture that seemed to come from a European palace decorated the environments. Lucy held her mother's hand so tightly that her fingers were white. They were led to a spacious room, where a grand piano occupied a place of prominence. And there, sitting in an armchair near large windows that overlooked an illuminated garden, was Michael Jackson. Seeing the family enter, the star rose with a warm smile. He wore black pants, a white shirt with gold details, and, to Ray's surprise, no dark glasses. His eyes, visible and expressive, shone with genuine kindness. "Ray!" exclaimed Michael, approaching with an extended hand. "I'm so happy you could come." Ray shook Michael's hand, still stunned. "Mr. Jackson, I don't know what to say. It's an honor." Michael laughed. "Please call me Michael, and you must be Sarah," he said, turning to Ray's wife, who seemed about to faint. "Ray told me about you all while fixing my car." Sarah only managed to mumble thanks, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and excitement. Then Michael's gaze fell on Lucy, who was half hidden behind her mother, her eyes as wide as if she were seeing a being from another planet. Michael knelt down, coming to the girl's height. "And you must be Lucy, the dancer," he said softly. "Your father told me you'd like my songs." Lucy, normally chatty and outgoing, was completely speechless. After a moment that seemed like an eternity, she managed a small nod. "You know, I started dancing when I was about your age," continued Michael, his voice gentle. "I used to practice for hours and hours." These words seemed to break the spell. "I practice every day too," exclaimed Lucy, finally finding her voice. "I know how to do the moonwalk. Well, sort of." Michael smiled, genuinely enchanted. "Maybe you can show me after dinner? We could dance together." Lucy's eyes filled with tears of pure happiness. That would be the best day of my life." The dinner that followed was surprisingly relaxed. Despite the luxurious setting and uniformed waiters serving dishes that Ray could barely pronounce, Michael proved to be an accessible and attentive host. He asked about Ray's garage, about what it was like growing up in a small town, and listened with genuine interest when Sarah talked about her work as an assistant teacher at the local elementary school. "I never had a normal formal education," Michael commented at one point. "Always on tours, always working since childhood. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to grow up like you in a place where everyone knows each other." Ray then realized something he hadn't noticed before. Behind all the fame and fortune, there was a certain loneliness in Michael's eyes, a yearning for something he might never have. Normality. After dinner, Michael took the family to a special room, equipped with what appeared to be a private cinema system. "I'd like to show you something I've been working on," he said with a gleam of enthusiasm in his eyes. "It's the Thriller video. It's not finished yet, but I think you, especially you, Lucy, will like it." What followed was a surreal experience. Ray, Sarah, and Lucy watched open-mouthed what would clearly be a revolutionary landmark in the history of music videos. The horror scenes, the choreography with the zombies, Michael's transformation into a werewolf. Everything was so beyond what any of them had seen before that they were literally speechless when the lights came on. That was amazing!" Lucy finally exclaimed, jumping from her chair. "The dancing zombies and your eyes turned yellow and She gestured frantically, unable to express everything she had felt. Michael laughed, clearly happy with the enthusiastic reaction. "I'm glad you liked it. Now, how about that dance you promised to show me?" What happened next would forever be etched in the memory of the Phelps family. Lucy, the little 8-year-old girl from a small town, dancing alongside Michael Jackson. Despite her initial shyness, she showed her improvised moonwalk, making Michael applaud with genuine enthusiasm. Then, to the girl's complete delight, he demonstrated the correct step, holding her hand and patiently guiding her. "You have natural talent," Michael praised, after almost an hour of dancing and laughter. "Keep practicing, and one day you might dance professionally if you want." As the night progressed, Ray noticed that his respect for Michael Jackson grew exponentially. Not just for the international star that he was, but for the kind and humble man who revealed himself in each interaction. A man who, even surrounded by unimaginable fame and fortune, valued simple gestures of kindness and gratitude. When it finally came time for them to leave, Michael accompanied the family to the entrance. Before saying goodbye, he handed Ray an envelope. "Ray, you helped me when I needed it without knowing who I was. Your honesty and dedication impressed me. Inside this envelope is something that I hope can repay your gesture in some way." Ray, uncomfortable, tried to refuse. "Mr. Jackson, Michael, it's really not necessary. I was just doing my job." Michael smiled. "Please accept it. It's not just money, although there is a check, too. There's a document my lawyer prepared. It's a scholarship for Lucy, guaranteeing her education up to university, including dance classes with the best teachers, if she wants to follow that path." Sarah gasped, bringing her hands to her face in shock. Ray felt his eyes well up. "Why?" was all he managed to ask. Michael looked at the small family before him, his face softening into a contemplative expression. Because people like you remind me of what's real. In a world where I'm treated as something beyond human, where I can't walk down the street without causing a commotion, finding someone who simply treated me like anyone else, that's priceless. He knelt down once more to speak to Lucy. And as for you, young dancer, I hope to see your name in lights one day. Maybe we can even dance together again. On the ride back home, the family remained in reverent silence, each absorbing what had just happened. The envelope Michael had given them contained not just a generous check, but also official documents establishing the Lucy Phelps Scholarship, with sufficient funds to guarantee her complete education and dance training. In the weeks and months that followed, the Phelps' life changed drastically. The news that Michael Jackson had established a scholarship for a local mechanic's daughter spread quickly. Ray's small garage suddenly became famous in the region, attracting customers who came both for the quality of his work and for the chance to hear the story firsthand. Lucy, for her part, flourished with the professional dance classes she could now attend. Her talent, nurtured by excellent teachers, developed remarkably. And every Christmas and birthday, without fail, a personal card arrived from Michael Jackson, often accompanied by exclusive gifts and tickets to his shows. Ray never forgot the lesson from that hot July day. Sometimes simply doing your job with honesty and dedication, regardless of who you're serving, can open unimaginable doors. And more importantly, behind the masks of fame, fortune, and stardom, there are real people with heart, feelings, and a deep appreciation for human authenticity. Years later, in 1991, when Lucy, now a professional dancer, was selected to participate as a backup dancer in one of the shows of Michael Jackson's Dangerous World Tour, Ray couldn't help but smile as he remembered that seemingly ordinary day in his garage when a broken Rolls-Royce brought not just Michael Jackson, but a life change he could never have imagined. And as he watched his daughter dance on stage alongside her idol, under the bright lights and before a frenzied crowd, Ray silently thanked fate for placing in his hands that broken belt that forever changed the course of their lives. That night, after the show, Michael hugged Lucy and then turned to Ray, with that same gentle smile from years ago. "You know, Ray," he said, "some of the greatest blessings in our lives come disguised as mechanical problems." And they both laughed, sharing the secret of how a casual encounter had woven their lives into an unimaginable tapestry of friendship, opportunity, and mutual gratitude. The story of the mechanic and the star became a legend in the small town. A story that Ray told and retold with pride, not so much for the fact of having met one of the world's biggest stars, but for the humanity and generosity he had discovered behind the fame. A story about how simple gestures can trigger extraordinary changes, and how fate sometimes uses a broken belt to connect lives that would otherwise never cross paths.